In this video, I'm going to be discussing the meaning of the planet Saturn in astrology. So what is Saturn all about? Well, the reason why I'm doing this video is because I'm going to do a whole series of videos on Saturn through all 12 of the zodiac signs. So first we have to start off by defining the meaning of Saturn in terms of the planetary energies and its qualities. Now, there is also a mythological story with Saturn that I'm not going to get into here. You can, do your own research on that. But that story really contributes to the themes and the lessons that Saturn has to teach us, and the wisdom that it has to provide. And so there's actually a really good video that does this, and it's called, it's by a channel, Cosmic Arts Astrological Services. And you can find that video where she talks about the mythology of Saturn and ties it into the traits of Saturn. But so anyway, this video is going to occur right now. Alrighty, so we're starting off with defining Saturn. So Saturn is a malefic planet. It is known as a malefic. Jupiter, which comes right before it, is known as a benefic. It bestows gifts and blessings and good fortune, abundance, luck, if I didn't say it before. It brings growth and opportunities, fun, play, enjoying life as it is, making the most out of it. It's very philosophical, and it is the wisdom that you can gain through traveling, through higher learning, religion, and the experiences that you have. So it's a more positive energy. But with Saturn, it's not that it's a more negative energy, but it's not so much the strengths and the opportunities as it is the disadvantages. As Jupiter brings in a lot of help and hope and all those kinds of things like that. But when we're talking about Saturn, we are talking about an energy that presents itself in a way that isn't easy. That is like a kryptonite, in Superman, how there is a kryptonite or your Achilles heel. That part of, something externally, but it's more internally that, that part of you that you continually fall back on as it's a weakness. And it's a weakness that you need to overcome and build up immunity to and rise above those obstacles, when you're going down the obstacle course of life. And so slowly but surely, over time, you build up that inner strength. And then you overcome that obstacle. You are able to withstand the kryptonite, embrace that challenge, integrate all that, and slowly but surely really step into that and be the master of that kryptonite. So Saturn represents an energy in your chart that did not come naturally to you at birth. It wasn't an easy or comfortable or positive or benefic area for you in your chart. When you were born, it wasn't just, oh, I went to a lemon tree and got lemons and made lemonade. I didn't just get it handed to me on a platter. I didn't just have the gods or the universe just hand me this, and I didn't have all the answers. And I didn't, I don't have all the resources, and I'm not, necessarily very much experienced and comfortable in this area. It's more of a challenge, but a challenge that allows us to step into and fully embrace and become the master of what that sign is about and what that house that Saturn rules in your natal chart, that area of life, because the houses are the areas of life, whatever that house represents, in terms of wherever Saturn falls in your chart. So you're also growing into that, evolving into that. So when it comes to Saturn, this planet presents obstacles that we need to work very, very hard to face. We're not trying to avoid the obstacle. We're not beating around the bush with Saturn. We're not doing that. Instead, we are facing the challenge head on. And we are working hard to achieve and rise above that challenge, because Saturn is the planet of hard work. It's all about the blood, sweat, and tears that you put into something. It is all about the physical effort that you put into something, the give it all you got energy. This is an energy which does not provide an easy pathway. Instead, it provides the obstacle that empowers us and challenges us and turns the focus on us to clear out that pathway. And it forces us to work hard to receive those rewards, to receive those blessings and those gifts. Saturn rewards hard work. And it's like the strict father. I am going to give you this, and I'm not going to spoil you, but I'm going to give you this as a reward for your hard work. And then the more hard work that you yourself put in to this area, that Saturn wants to test us to make sure that we are the absolute best that we can be, the harder we work at something or work through something, the less Saturn's influence is, the less harsh or demanding or difficult it is. And so Saturn, over time, as we grow older, it just kind of wears off, eases off. Saturn and wine, I have a post about that on my community tab and on my Instagram, where I talk about how Saturn's an energy where, like fine wine, it takes time to mature to get the full flavor and taste that you enjoy out of that fine wine, that you like that taste, that you find joy and pleasure and amusement with that particular taste because it's been given the time. So, that's a huge part of Saturn. So we're going to get into that more. So Saturn also deals with boundaries. It is boundaries. It wants to put an earth structure into something. It's like, okay, well, here's the ground, and now we're going to build these brick walls, and we're going to lay them flat down on that ground. So Saturn's sort of the limitations that you are putting on yourself, the restrictions that you're putting on yourself, but it also looks to healthy boundaries that we build up for ourselves to achieve the things that we want to accomplish and fully commit and persevere and stick it out with whatever we need to accomplish or whatever goal or challenge we need to face and see through. So when we put up those boundaries, when we say, okay, well, I'm putting the blinders on, and I'm saying no to this thing over here. I'm saying no to this apple pie when I should be just eating apples instead for dessert. Or instead of sitting down and watching this video, I'm going to go exercise. Or instead of, soda at this point of the day, I'm going to drink water. So it is putting up a boundary against something so that you can say yes to something else. Because the way that discipline works is, okay, well, I'm going to say no to something, but then I'm going to say yes to something. And then when I say yes to something, I also say no to something else. So it looks at boundaries, not, going excess in something, not going excessive. Not falling prey to the downside of human nature, more the gluttonous side. It deals with how are you going to fulfill your exercise plan or your New Year's resolution, or how are you going to achieve this goal in an orderly way where you have self-control and discipline. You're keeping in line. Saturn's very much about keeping in a line and staying on that course, not veering off course. So when you veer off course, you can easily get yourself back on that course. So, that's a huge part of Saturn. Is sort of, growing into a sense that we are in control of our lives. And we are on a path to greatness. We are on a path to achieve great things. And for that to happen, we need to stay focused and not let ourselves get lazy, slack off, and really just give up and not have the work ethic or the ambition or the perseverance to, see it through whatever we want to. So Saturn is the taskmaster. It says, here's the plan. This is what you need to do. These are the steps. This is what has to be done. You need to put in this hard work over here. You need to take yourself out of this video game or whatever you're doing, and you need to find something productive and useful to do. That is very much the Saturn energy, is being very, very productive and useful towards something. So that's huge. So another thing that Saturn rules over is time, because it deals with karma. So we're talking about how, when we look at a clock and when we look at the amount of time that we only have so many hours in a day. We only have so much time in our lives to spend, so many days a week. And Saturn reminds us of those limits of time, that we do not have all of eternity to do something. So it's like, okay, well, you have this limitation and you need to make it work. You need to make this fulfilling. You need to put in all that you have and use it wisely. Time is of the essence. How are you going to make the most of this time and be disciplined, productive, hardworking? Saturn is really about what you make out of something, and is what you're doing really worth the time? Saturn wants to make sure that we're not falling asleep at the wheel and wasting our lives away. Saturn wants to make sure that every day and every moment we are doing something that can help us grow and help us step into who we were meant to become when we signed up to be a soul living a human experience on this planet. Saturn wants to make sure that we are doing the things that we need to do for our betterment and for our highest good as well. So, Saturn is like, okay, well, you've gotten this far, but here's how you can go farther. This is how far you still need to go. And this is how you can improve. You've got to the peak of this mountain. So here's another mountain. Here's another challenge. When we rest on our laurels and when we achieve this challenge, then life is worth living really by challenges and new things to overcome, new things to accomplish, new goals to strive for. There is never a peak of a mountain. There is a peak. There's never a mountain, one mountain, and there's a peak of it. There's just a mountain and you reach that peak. And then you have another mountain and another summit to reach. So that's really, really important to remember. So it deals with time. Tradition is another thing that Saturn rules over. The way that things have always been done. By the book. When you win a race, there is a tradition that in the evening, you cut through that red banner as you're the winner, and you cut through that banner. That's what the winner does at the end of the race. That you have achieved that winning goal, and then you move right through that banner. What if there was a tradition that on the winter solstice, people would be in a parking lot ringing silver bells at the sky as it's all orange with a black dot in the middle, worshiping the people who got stuck up there when they were on the roller coaster after they have seen a teacher in black and white, after somebody threw away toys that was given to him by a fairy. I'm not making sense right now. Point is, what if that could be a tradition? Because that's what Saturn rules over. Traditions. That song from Fiddler on the Roof. It's very conventional energy. It's very by the book. It's very conservative energy. It's not looking for the unorthodox or the futurist energy. That's where we talk about Uranus. Saturn is universal laws, rules over that. It deals with, well, you're following your ancestors. You are walking in a herd, and you are moving in alignment with that herd. You're not going beyond the reef because that's not what is traditional. So Saturn is about the rules, the laws, the way that things have always been, the traditions that have started, and the things that have passed down from one generation to the next. Saturn rules the past. It rules over how what has happened has built up to the now. Therefore, it rules over history. So it rules over how all of the events that happened in the past lead up to now, and the significance of those events. And it looks at honoring the past, looking to the past for answers. And so, it looks at holding true and respecting and finding appreciation and respect and acceptance for the way that things have always been in the current structures and the powers that be. And then you have Uranus, which wants to break free of that and revolutionize and innovate and break out of those structures for something much more enlightened and advanced for humanity's sake. Now, Saturn is an energy that's like a father. It's very patriarchal in nature. And it rules over a word, and I don't know how this is going to land in everyone's consciousness. How does this word land at you? When I say maturity, how does that land for you? Because that's another thing that Saturn governs, is you are, at point A, but then now you are rising up one step upon another, one experience upon another. You are growing, you are becoming wiser, you are maturing through the hard work, through learning the hard lessons, through trial and error, through your life experiences, as I've said, through working very hard and having these challenges that you overcome, which may involve growing pains. It deals with spiritual maturity. That's what it corresponds to. With age comes wisdom, is a saying with this that I was hearing in The Good Witch. So yeah, it deals with very much old people. Saturn corresponds to older people. And the wisdom that you learn and that you cultivate, Saturn deals with what you need to cultivate. It deals with the wisdom that you gain over time, and all the treasure chest in the box and the abundance of wisdom that you have, often through hard work and learning hard lessons. Saturn is about the hard lessons, the truth that you do not want to face, the things that you don't want to hear, the things that you don't want to deal with and don't want to have be a part of your life, and the work that you don't want to do but you need to do. That's very Saturn energy. So, your obligations and the things in the material world that you you don't want to do, and you still maybe avoid doing because of how challenging and how intimidating, maybe monotonous or overwhelming that those obstacles can be, but we know that it is for our highest good that we face those challenges. So with age comes wisdom. So Saturnian people are very, very wise individuals. So part of it is withstanding the test of time, that throughout time you have learned and you've gained all this wisdom. So self-knowledge, coming from a place of self-knowledge, knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses after facing those obstacles, knowing yourself at a very deep level, at a very old, familiar level. That's what Saturn corresponds to. So, when we're talking about self-knowledge, you're not just doing things impulsively. You're not just acting out because you feel you want to act out. You're not just taking, a leap of faith on something that doesn't work. You're not just acting prematurely or going about something in an irresponsible and inexperienced, unproductive, destructive, careless, not thought out, not planned way. So, knowing yourself at that level to where you can make sound black and white logical decisions and commit to whatever your goals are. So another strong attribute with Saturn is not being up in the clouds, not having, the rose-colored glasses on. Seeing things as they are. Just seeing things as they are. Facing things as they are. Not as how you want them to be. And from seeing things as they are, from getting out of denial and being present with what is, facing the reality of whatever circumstance or situation that you are in, and then, okay, well, this is the problem, and this is what I have to work with. This is what's going on, and so how can I make productive use of this? How can I pick up, take action, manifest something out of what I have and make it work and make it so that whatever results that I get pay off for me. So when we ground down and when we focus down and get very, very practical and pragmatic and very realistic and rational with what is going on in our lives, we can really make great strides when it comes to Saturn energy and what it deals with. We can really focus in a very positive direction. We can move towards what we need to move towards. And we can maybe achieve things beyond our wildest dreams. Who knows? Yeah. So these lessons that you learn are not through just easy. They don't come easy. You don't just learn the lessons that Saturn is trying to teach you just by hearing it or just by learning it and then remembering it and applying it. It is through the difficult, maybe even painful, stretching, very just super uncomfortable circumstances that we learn these lessons. Maybe through betrayal or feeling unloved or feeling held back, feeling judged, or whatever it may be. Because I didn't know what your life experience is, but those the rough times in your life, and the wisdom and the lessons that can be gained through those rough times, how those challenges can be turned into opportunities for growth. That's what Saturn deals with. What can you make out of this? How is this pushing me to grow, to mature, to find the strength within myself, to find the resilience within myself and the self-sufficiency to really evolve on that spiritual level. Now, Saturn rules structure. You wake up every morning, you brush your teeth, you do things in a routine. It deals with, the structures of your life. The foundations, the physical foundations, how you manage and organize your life. Is it routine? And that's one of the few, well, I don't want to say the few, but that's one of the keys to happiness, is having a life where you wake up every morning and you have a purpose. You have a reason for waking up. You have a reason for getting up, living your life, putting your energy and life force out into the world and taking action towards what you want to see as your dreams in reality, as your ideas, as your visions in reality. It is having a system for yourself and having a timetable. I'm going to do this at this time. And through that creates meaning. Saturn is the meaning inviter. Although it doesn't invite it, it sort of really pushes you and maybe even requires from you that you create your own meaning in life, making life mean something. Saturn is all about what is of value. Saturn wants you to create a life of value. and to do things that prove that you are valuing yourself, that you are putting that effort and that worth out into the world. You're not just doing it halfway, you're not just cutting corners going by the sidelines, but you are putting the most effort and energy and time into something and milking it for all it's worth. And, really going to the ends of the earth to, to do something. So really caring and showing that you care and making it mean something, doing it like you really care about that thing. So it's all about the order. It's all about your responsibilities. What are you responsible for in your life? Who are you responsible for? Stepping up to the plate of those responsibilities and not being a victim or martyr, but being in control. I am the leader of my life. The creator of my universe. I am the one responsible for what I need to do and for what I want in my life. There's also something too, well, if I want something, I can, you can do anything. You can set your mind to anything that you're willing to work hard for. And so, Saturn deals with your duties. It's about taking ownership and accountability and being, the truth, being in the driver's seat of your life, being independent, being an adult, if you will, being in charge of your life. So Saturn also corresponds to authority figures, especially father figures. On the mundane level, it deals with authority and our relationship and maybe conflicts with authority figures as they want to, make us better, and, nature versus nurture, the nurture aspect of it. And Saturn nurtures in a sort of tough love kind of way, providing those structures and providing those solid foundations, but we need to do the emotionally nourishing bit to ourselves. So, so Saturn deals with parental figures. It also corresponds to governments, corporations, those kind of structures that they're solid, they're stable, they are powerful, they make the rules, they make the laws, they're in control. And they've been around for many, many years. Solid, long-term structures. That's what Saturn rules. So Saturn rules anything that can be good for the long term, any goal that its results can have long-term effects. Any structure or relationship or anything that is good for the long term. That's what Saturn corresponds to. Because it really wants to make something last. So Saturn corresponds to your blocks of where you were limited, of where there was a disadvantage, or where you got the short end of the stick in one area of your life. So Saturn is the opposite of Jupiter. It's the exact opposite. So, it corresponds to, Saturn isn't just that person there or that force there to hold your hand. It is, I'm giving you this advice and wisdom, and you need to do this, and you need to do it yourself and put the work in. That's Saturn energy. So it deals with some frustrations that you have with a certain area of your life, or it deals with work that you have to push yourself. to achieve. It is an area that requires time and time and again effort after effort, the little engine that could. And it's an energy that forces you to have that self-confidence, to have the belief in yourself that you can do it through that challenge that you can rise above. So Saturn, it also deals with your insecurities, your fears that you have that you are working on rising above. You're facing those fears. Yeah. So again, Saturn is not something that comes naturally. It takes time for us to grow into that sign and those characteristics and traits. So Saturn's also karma. It deals with karma. What you reap, you reap what you sow. What goes around comes around. What you put out into the world is what comes back. Now, there are films out there, Darman films, and I think that a huge emphasis that Darman put on his films repeatedly, and you can see this in several of his videos, is karma. And a lesson that pops up over and over and over is the goodness that you put into the world always has a way of coming back to you. And if you don't, be nice to the people on your way up, because you just might pass them again on the way down. That is a very sort of Saturnian lesson, all those kind of things like that. So what you put into something is exactly what you get out. So if you want a lot of money, then work this amount of hours. If you want this size of a harvest, then you need to grow this many crops. If you want this building to be done at this particular time, then you need to structure it out and make sure that it does happen. So, you can see how that works. It deals with consequences. Saturn deals with consequences. And the interesting thing about that is consequences, they can be positive and they can also be negative. And so, it deals with whatever comes out of the action that you take or the actions that you take based off of the decisions that you make. So if you do this thing, then this is what you get out of it. If you don't do well on this quiz, then you get this grade. Whatever it might be. So it corresponds to committing, not doing it halfway, not giving up, but committing to something. Seeing it through. That's what Saturn deals with. So Saturn corresponds to it. This is an energy that puts an emphasis on your achievements out into the world, your accomplishments, your status and prestige. Saturn is a social planet, how other people see you, especially in positions of power and authority, how you want to be seen out into the world. So it deals with your social status. So how do you want to be treated based off of the work that you have done? That, it's not that you deserve this, but you have done this amount of work, and so you then deserve or have earned the right or privilege to be treated. Well, I want to say the privilege to be treated in this way, to be given these things for that hard work. And then the Saturn is also the legacy that you have to leave behind, that you made your mark, that you have done all these things. You've worked this hard, and this is the line that you've drawn in the sand. This is the impact that you want to leave on people. This is what you have done. Martin Luther King Jr. and what he did. And leading, a bunch of people to stand up for themselves through his speeches, especially the famous I Have a Dream speech. You can look at various people in history. Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson, even Chen, who built the Great Wall of China, Gandhi, all of these people who put in that hard work and left a mark. Martin Luther King was also a Capricorn. And I think that he is the perfect embodiment of the sign of Aquarius, as it is ruled by both Saturn and, Uranus. So, yeah. Now, Saturn also deals with the career. It rules over the 10th house. It rules over the sign of Capricorn, which we're going to talk a little bit about later. But it deals over your career. The midheaven is basically your 10th house. It deals with the highest that you can achieve in the world. I'm going to discuss the midheaven more in depth on another video. But it deals with your career. That's what it corresponds to. So, this particular planet, now I'm going to get into some technical, details here. So this planet rules over Capricorn, represented by the mountain goat. Think of Capricorn energy, very, very hardworking. Saturn also deals over bones, structures in the body that bones and teeth, basically. Bones, teeth are the areas of the body that Saturn rules. Because Saturn is all about parts of the body that you actually have to put work into maintaining. If you don't brush your teeth, they're going to rot. And, you need to, work out and exercise and do all those things. It deals with, those structures in your body that continue to grow and evolve with you as you grow older. So, those kind of structural elements of the body is what Saturn rules. Now, in terms of ruling Capricorn, very hardworking, ambitious, goal-oriented energy. Now, the sign that a planet rules over is very much related to the qualities of that planet. Capricorn is symbolized by the mountain goat, who takes one step at a time up that mountain, does not give up, sees something through, and then reaches the peak. It's very conventional in its energy. Now, Saturn also rules Aquarius. And so Aquarius is sort of giving us a window into the future, that we're taking these structures and we're looking at the past, the way that things have been, and looking at how can we advance and innovate and make this better and make this more sustainable and equitable and fair from an idealistic but also a material perspective for humanity as a whole. So, Aquarius takes that past, and we're looking at the past and how things have always been, Saturn. And we are bringing it into the future. We're changing what, doesn't serve humanity for the highest good anymore. It deals with technology as well. So it's, Saturn and Aquarius. And so it deals with the 10th and the 11th houses. The 11th house, the 10th house is your work, your career, your reputation. The 11th house is more your networks, friends, friend groups, your dreams, your hopes, your aspirations. the things that you get money for that you actually have a passion and desire for, that hopefully you will bring into physical manifestation and achieve in the practical world. Now, Saturn is, although this is not my belief system, it is a fact. Saturn is considered detriment in the sign of, and I have this in my chart, Saturn is detriment in Cancer. Any planet that is in a sign that is opposite to the sign that it rules is considered detriment. And I find that that is a very narrow label for a planetary placement. They're all, it's just a very, very different placement. And it has its own, strengths and potentials, I want to say, and obstacles in it. But out of comparison, it is sort of probably one of the more difficult ones in its own way. So that's why, in the system, the hierarchy, I say this in a matter-of-fact way, not that I believe it, but in terms of the pecking order of the planetary placements, that sort of falls at the lower end of the totem pole. And I'll be discussing Saturn and Cancer in a future video. And I actually have a video that I have done on Saturn and Cancer. And I'm going to plan to do, another more official video on that and discussing it again, maybe, because there's a lot to discuss. It's really, really profound and kind of a harrowing placement, and it is my own placement. So there is so much depth and complexity and importance to be gained in that particular placement. So I'm going to discuss that on another video. But it is considered to be detriment in Cancer. It is fall in the two fire signs. And also I want to say that because Saturn used to rule Aquarius, it's also, considered astrological detriment, and I want to say that in quotations, detriment in Leo. Leo is about, self-expression, how you want to shine, and, so anyway, now Saturn is considered fall in Aries. Aries is very pioneering, wants to be independent, is all about the I am, what you need, what you want, initiating your own path in life, living, a life of authenticity. And Saturn, Aries is a very childlike, impulsive energy, and Saturn is very, very different than that. Now, Saturn is also exalted in Libra. And so Saturn being exalted is like the highest placement for Saturn, that it has this, like it's Saturn's basically taking a trip up to heaven, and that goes with all the planets. Like they were, at home wherever they are. But what if there was another place where it was so amazing and there's so much bounty there? And it's like you have all you have and you're comfortable at your home base, but then you move to like a home away from home, let's say, and that place has so much to offer you, and you can make so much out of that place, and you can get so far out of that place, and you can do a lot of great things, and you have a lot of tools that basically, you are trying to cut down a tree and you have been given from somebody sending you a parachute, the absolute best, tool to cut down that tree. You're Harry Potter, and you got the 3,000 something or other broomstick. You're getting the best of the best. So that is, the exaltation. It's exalted. So Saturn's, exalted in Libra. Libra deals with the law. It deals with the justice systems. It corresponds to what is fair and right. Getting along with other people, relationships, and all those kind of things. And it puts very practical, the expectations of society kinds of lessons on Libra. So whatever sign that Saturn is in, it's like, okay, well, these are the challenges of this placement, and these are the lessons that you need to learn about this particular placement and from this placement. Now, Saturn takes about 2.5 years to travel through a sign, and it takes a full Saturn cycle 29 years to complete. That means that every 29 years there's a song. It's like karma, comes back around. It's a cycle. There's a song by Tori Amos. It's called 29 Years. And 29, in my opinion, is a very karmic number. It deals with, it's a number that deals very much to me of endings, mastery, growth, that you are, that you're at the end of something, that you are reaping what you have sown, and you've come this far and you are concluding and you're at the highest level of something. There is 29 degrees of a sign. That is the limit of the amount of degrees that a planet can pass through a certain sign. Saturn takes 29 years, about 29 years, give or take 28 to 30 years, for you to have your Saturn return 29 years from the point that you were born. You have your first Saturn return 28 to 30, your second Saturn return 58 to 60, your third Saturn return 88 to 90. And it's also coincidental that Saturn was, for a very, very, very long time, for many centuries, as opposed to the grand scheme of things, Saturn was the limit. Saturn was as far as you could go. Saturn is the last planet that could be seen with the naked eye. And it's a stretch for you to see, that planet with the naked eye. Just like Saturn is where you have to stretch yourself. Now, Saturn was the limit. Saturn was the cutoff. That was the boundary. Saturn rules boundaries, limitations, all those kind of things like that. So it's very, very coincidental. Now, just a quick summary of what the Saturn return is about. It is a time where you basically look at the wall and what you've written on it. Look at the foundations that you build up. Look at it. What have I done with my life? What could I have done differently? What could I have done better? Is there anything that I have not taken advantage of? Where did I not put in the work? Where have I not used my time wisely? Where have I not put in the effort, the discipline? It's basically like a review, a Saturn retrograde. Saturn's like the principal, where you go into his office and he asks you, how is life going? And you're basically given a test that the teacher gives you, an evaluation of your life. That's what the Saturn return is. You're given this test, and you've come this far in the school of life, this far in terms of this point of your life, and now you have a rite of passage. Now you are graduating, and now you have mastered this. Spiritual adulthood in astrology land begins at 28 to 30. You've been out partying in your 20s, out at, parties, in a car, like a 1920s car, and then boom, it hits that point in your life where it's time to get serious, start, growing a family, get into a job, doing very adult things for your life, really, really getting serious about your life and planning it out. That's what the Saturn return is. I'm looking back to see what I had the dream or aspiration to do that never really materialized, or I never completed this project, or I never achieved this thing, or did this in the way that I wanted to. And so, if you've not taken responsibility, if you've not put in the hard work, Saturn return can come, and it can be kind of a doozy. It can be a smack in the face. You're at a party, you're, living the highs, there's a lot of music, and then Saturn comes, and then it all melts away, and you're left with exactly what is. You're, brought down to what is, and now, you've been hit with the reality, and sometimes it can be a harsh reality that then, okay, well, I'm seeing what I've done, how things are in my life, and this is how I feel about the current status quo of my life, how things are going. And this is what I need to do. I need to get serious in this area of my life. I need to put in the work, have the discipline, whatever it is. That's what the Saturn return is. The Saturn return is when it comes back to the exact same sign and degree that it is in your natal birth chart. Every 28 to 30 years. Between those ages depends upon the degree of your Saturn and when that transit begins, and how old you are, and when your birthday is, and how old you turn at that point in time. So that's what that is. I have a whole nother video about the Saturn return that I filmed way back in March. You can find that video on my channel. Maybe I'll link that video here on my YouTube channel for you to see, either in the video or down in the description. Who knows? I hope that you enjoyed and got a lot of value out of this in-depth video on Saturn, the ultimate video on Saturn. I hope that you found this informative and worthwhile to watch. Yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this in-depth masterclass of a video on this particular planet. You really need to understand what the planet is about in order to then understand what signs and the aspects that Saturn makes in your natal chart, what house placement it's in, and that will come in future videos. Bye for now, everybody. Take care.